Hey there, I'm John,
And I'm Richard.
and this is Bronze and Modern Gods. Welcome, everybody. If you are new here, hi, welcome. Glad to see you. We've gotten quite a few new subscribers after our last few episodes. Our interview with Jim Shooter seemed to go over pretty well, huh?
That was so much fun.
I didn't have to do a scolding thumbnail this week like I did after the Paul Levitz interview. You guys actually watched it, which I appreciate. By the way, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods if you have not already. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please help us out. Hit that like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and bleep, 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 bleep. Richard, we've got a couple of things. We've got some show reviews. We both went to a couple of conventions this past weekend.
Mhm.
We've got viewer mail, our underrated books of the week, as always, and starting it off with our hot book of the week. Richard, tell them what it is.
It's House of Secrets number 116. You picked this book for a very, very particular reason, John, right?
It did. It is the first printed comic book work for writer David Michelini. Now, is it Michelini? Is it Michelini? Is it Micheline? I was always taught from the Marvel Bullpen Bulletins page that it's pronounced Michelini, rhymes with tickle my knee. That's what they wrote in the bullpen page. So I'm going to go with
That's
what.
canon then.
Who's going to lie to you? The Marvel bullpen? I don't think the Marvel bullpen page is going to lie to you, Richard.
I don't
No.
think so either.
Who is David Michelini? Well, he's famous for his epic run on Iron Man with Bob Layton, Armor Wars, Demon in a Bottle, things like that. But you guys probably know him, of course, as the writer on Amazing Spider-Man and the co-creator of Venom with a little kid named Todd McFarlane. Well, why are we picking this book? He's having a signing event at CGC. Books for this David Michelini signing need to be submitted by May 5th. I have a little story here from WonderCon this weekend, okay? Standing in line at the CGC booth right at opening about 11:45 a.m. Friday to do my express drop-off. And there is a bit of a line already forming because everybody wants to drop their books off and get them, no one wants to carry their books in their backpack all day. So the gentleman in front of me and I start up a conversation and we're talking, and he says he's dropping his book off because it is a yellow label signed by Todd, an ASM 300. He wants them to crack it open, and then he's going to have David Michelini sign it and get it certified and graded again and sent back to him. Poor guy waits in this line with me for about 45 minutes to an hour because it's a slow process, even though it's express drop off. And they tell him he's in the wrong line. I know. I felt so bad for him. I wish I had known. I would have warned him ahead of time.
Oh man, that's horrible.
Tip for you guys in conventions: if you're doing express drop off, it's express drop off. That means it's books that you have gone online, filled out the forms already, given them the credit card info, signed in with your account, listed everything. You can't do a walk up in that express line. You're just going to stand in line and be sent away and sent to another line. So watch it for that. Back to House of Secrets 116, a CGC 9.6 sold in January this year for $190. Meanwhile, a 9.2 sold this month for $171. So it looks like this book is not flying under the radar too much. Here's the thing. Here's why I think it's a hot book. You see these Bronze Age DC horror books in bargain bins all over the place, right?
Right.
So dig through them. Look for some of these keys, some of those Bernie Wrightson covers, those Michael Cullotta covers, or House of Secrets 116. You might get lucky and find it cheap. So happy digging.
Yeah, definitely. Good pick.
All right, on to our main topic, plural. Richard, we both went to conventions this weekend.
Right.
Why don't you start us off? You went to something called FanExpo in Cleveland. They have these everywhere.
They do. FanExpo is a series of it's pop culture an exposition, and they're held all around the country. The one in Cleveland used to be called Wizard World.
Oh, it's the old Wizard World.
Right, and it got renamed to FanExpo, or FanExpo is putting it on now. It's probably more accurate. This show runs all weekend from Friday through Sunday. I went with our mutual friend Forrest because it's always better to have two people when you're hunting for stuff. And we walked around, and it was lighter than I expected in terms of comic book vendors. We found 5 different vendors across the floor, varying sizes. Our friend at Comics Argo, Eric, he had probably the largest booth there. It's it was all over the place in terms of offerings and pricing, and but I did find that, and again, this is the first day of the show. I found the dealers were open to negotiation on the first day, which is always indicative that we're in a soft market, because typically dealers don't soften up until Saturday, Sundays especially. If you go in late Sunday afternoon, most dealers would be flexible because they want to get rid of books. But the first day of the show, you would think they're a little bit more hard on prices. Nobody really seemed to be that way. Now the prices were in some cases inflated. You got that show premium that you're going to pay. But whenever I talked about a more reasonable price, I got a lot of traction getting there. One of the things that I was talking to specifically, I was talking to Eric at Comics Are Go, and this is a trend I've noticed as well. The slab books don't move as fast as the raws. He found that he would get slabs and they would not sell as quickly as if the book was raw. I don't know if that is a price trend, because obviously raw books are less expensive, or if it's just a trend. People are becoming less endeared to CGC and CBCS as grading companies because of some of the problems that they've had here in the past couple of years. But yeah, the show was fairly large, but it was mainly pop culture. There were a lot of anime. There's a lot of cosplayers walking around. Not so many Spider-Man. A whole lot more, Dragon Ball Z, things like that.
Hmm.
So that was just a change in the interests, I guess, of the fans for this particular convention. Still, it was a good show. It just wasn't as large as some of the purely comic book shows that we've gone to recently.
Let's see what you got.
Let me start off with, most of these cons have exclusives. This is the con exclusive for Cleveland. It is pretty Batman Beyond #1 foil.
Is it the first series reprinted, or is it like a new series? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I
Hmm.
was just looking at it and thinking that, because it's got all the villains and characters from the first series on the cover.
Okay. Okay.
So it potentially is the first series,
Pretty cool.
which is awesome, because the first series, I've got Batman Beyond #1 here on the wall. One of my favorite, DC animated shows. One of my favorite animated shows ever. So that was a no brainer purchase. Um, our our friend Jim Shooter, I can say our friend, right?
Now, did you see him there?
Yes, he was there. I was disappointed. These shows have areas for signatures for
Mhm.
people, and for they had the woman who played who did the voice for Harley Quinn.
Right.
She was there. They had the guy who was RoboCop. He was there. I can't remember his name. So they had people like that, and they had their own special lines and areas, and it was all that. They had poor Jim sitting with like in one of the artist booths, or it was not even a booth; it was just a table, and he had his assistant there, and she had a box full of random books that if you bought, you got a signature for free. And so I walked up and picked a Secret Wars. Here we got Secret Wars on number 4, number 3. Sorry.
Newsstand.
Yeah, newsstand. So bought this. He signed it.
First, first Tatiana, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. There you go.
Yeah. And he signed it right there. Got a COA with it as well. So yeah, COA here's on the back.
Right.
So he talked. We were there. So I was there again with Forrest, and he talked and talked to Forrest about Valiant stuff. And the thing I've learned about Jim is you just have to prime the pump, and he'll go for like 20 minutes on a conversational topic. And he did that. And he had this big binder in front of him of all kinds of memorabilia. And he would flip through and talk about, this artist here did this picture for his birthday. And then, this here's a copy of the layouts that I sent to DC. And you could see, the original layouts. They were drawn by a 13-year-old. They were amateurish, but they blocked everything out. And then the artist then took it and used it as a guide to do the actual final pencils. It was amazing. So we talked to him for probably 25, 30 minutes, the two of us, and he remembered me from the show.
Good.
Um, And so we talked a bit about that. And no, he was a great guy. So I got a signature from him on that book.
So
Um,
he remembered you from the show, and he still talked to you.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly. I didn't have, security escort me out.
good. Right.
All right, this next book is a book I have been looking for forever. This is
Oh, tell everybody what
Static.
that.
Yeah, this is Static number 45. This is a very, very low print run book. This is the end. This is the last issue from the Static original Static series. Um, this book is really hard to find. I have this is the very first um a book I've seen in person. I've seen them on eBay and things like that, but in person, of all the cons I've been to, I never see this book. So, gentleman had this book. Um, he had it listed for $300, but he had 20% off everything on the wall. Talked him down from the 20% off is 240. I talked him down to 220 for it. I don't want to even jinx myself. I just got done pressing it.
Nice.
It is beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful. I think it's a 9.8. So I'm going to be sending it in. 9.8s for this book are pretty expensive. So but I bought this for me, primarily because I'm a big Static Shock fan from the TV show
Mhm.
and the comic run. So yeah, nice, gorgeous Mobius cover.
Why
Um,
did they get Mobius to do the cover for a final issue of a line that was winding down?
I don't know.
Because it wasn't
I'm
cheap.
thankful.
It wasn't cheap. Mobius ain't cheap. That the only thing I can figure out is they did not know they were getting canceled and they were trying to get sales up.
Yeah, but the title of the book is, the title of the episode is "The End" or something like that. So
Right, but that
I,
cover's a generic cover. They may have commissioned that
that's
for
true.
anything, you know?
That is very true. It is very generic, but it's a gorgeous cover. It pressed out really well,
Great,
and
congrats.
I am really looking forward to submitting it just to see what it comes back as.
Is that it? Is that all you got?
Uh, yeah, that's it. I didn't buy a lot. I'm in the mode where I'm buying for my own collection,
Yeah, me too. Interesting.
and
A lot of parallels here.
yeah, yeah, and that's what that book is what I saw for my collection. We went around the entire thing twice, and the only other thing they had a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang number one. And I was like, Forrest is like, oh man, that takes me back to Thanksgiving every year as a kid.
You and Forrest were there, knowing that I'm around too in the background
Oh,
lurking
yeah.
spiritually, and all of us missed out on a Chitty Chitty Bang Bang number one.
It was $100.
Okay.
It was wavy. I mean, it needed a press bad because
Yeah.
it was just the whole book was wavy. It was probably a 7. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a higher end book, but and for $100, it's like, okay, I'll talk them down to 80.
Yeah.
Do I buy it and then have to press it and then hope the press comes out good? And then, long and the short of it, I talked myself out of it. I didn't even think to bring it up to you.
I would have done it in an instant, no doubt whatsoever. Oh my goodness. The 96-year-old Dick Van Dyke is looking at you right now on Earth because he's still alive, and he's ashamed of you.
That book, that movie, is, it's in that class of movies like with the Great Race, and they're car movies that I grew up. I'm a big car guy, and part of the reason I'm a big car guy is because of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang
Yeah.
and the Great Race and all those
Smokey
movies.
is a bandit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that that movie was improvised?
Really? No, I didn't.
Supposedly, they threw out the script and they improvised like 80 to 90% of that movie. It kind of shows if you see it now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Later.
that makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot of chemistry between the actors, though. I think that helped
And
too.
Sally Field and Burt Reynolds getting it on. Hey, I went to WonderCon on Friday. Like I said, lots of parallels. What you're saying. I went on Friday morning, right at opening. We got there at 11:15, and we thought, okay, we're going to be circling around looking for parking forever. And there was a long line of cars to get into parking right at the main WonderCon Convention Center Drive. Okay, it's called Convention Center Way. We were shocked. We walked right in. If you guys were on following us on Instagram, you saw that Raphael and I went live, and right when we were walking in, there was no one outside hardly. We walked freely around there. The most action was at that CGC Express drop-off booth.
Mhm.
There were not a lot of dealers there. I remember past years, Friday, even though people are working and they're busy, it was a mob scene in years before. Not this time. Not that many comic book dealers, like you're saying, in that fan expo. The usual suspects, you had your Harley Yee, your Metropolis, Torpedo, our good friend Christian at Elvine's Comics. Lots of local dealers that I know that were just at California Comic Con. You would have seen a lot of repeats, Richard, if you were here. While a few dealers seem to still think it was 2021, frankly, way overpriced. Some dealers, including our good buddy Lawrence at P Dots Comics, were willing to deal. And so I have a few things to show off myself.
Yeah, what you got?
P Dots, speaking of the devil, had a Megaton number 3. I had to get this. This is, I think, the first cover appearance of the Savage Dragon by Erik
Oh, I didn't know
Larsen.
that.
Yeah, I think he makes a cameo in issue 2, but this is the first full appearance in a book I've never had, and thought, oh, why not? Got a good deal on that, so thank you there, Lawrence. Speaking of Lawrence, he also had stuff from my early Valiant collection. Speaking of Jim Shooter, Valiant 2 through 5 with the coupons.
Nice.
Got a good deal on those. So very happy. And then there were a few other dealers that had some higher end books. One guy had a lot of Peanuts, and he had 2 copies of Black Rider Rides Again #1, which is a full Jack Kirby Marvel Atlas Western that I wanted, but I just couldn't pull the trigger. Western. But he did have 2 books I needed that I've needed for a long time. Everyone on the podcast is going to cheer for me in the background. Get your applause ready. The first one, finally, I can check it off the list. Dark Shadows #1 with the poster.
Yay.
It's gorgeous. I mean, I don't know if you can see the
That black
black
cover,
cover.
yeah.
The worst part is a barely imperceptible color breaking corner here.
Mhm.
You can see that.
A little marker, you could touch that right up.
Yeah, exactly. I love the color purple. Um, it's not just a movie, it's a label. Uh, it's got a little bump up here on the top corner, but he also this dealer had a lot of those clear backing boards, which I've never seen
Yeah,
in person before. And the book was in a clear backing board, which I kind of like. I don't know
awesome.
if I know they're supposed to be acid free. I just don't trust them.
I bought 2 packs of them when they first came out,
Yeah.
and I get the same jitters. They're still sitting in my
I
box
I can't
because, yeah, full
maybe
backs are the way to go.
maybe moderns or something I don't really care about, but I can't do expensive. You guys tell me in the comments if I'm just being
Yeah,
if Richard
both
and I
of
are
us.
being
Yeah.
yeah. He had one more book that think I needed. This was fun. I'm there. I see a nearly full run. It is a Marvel Atlas title from the 50s. It's 4-issue run. I know I have #1 for sure. I think I have 2 and 3. I think I'm missing 4. He has them, and I don't know which one I'm missing because I've not put them in my Wacom app, by the way, which I should do right now. Wacom, go get it, download it. So I bought it anyway. I figured, you know what? It's a higher grade copy than whatever I may possibly have, so I can
Mhm.
always sell the under copy. And it is, fingers crossed, Yellow Claw #4.
Way to way to bury the lead. It's awesome.
So, I think I still have to pull them out. I think I may have a full run of Yellow Claw finally.
I'm
Or
surprised you don't have that in the special box or something.
I do. I was at the show and I didn't, I'm blanking. I said, like, I know I have one. I've owned them all before. That's the problem. So I don't know if I still have it or if I'm missing that one. And I really am disorganized. But I say with a press, this one is probably going to press to about a 5. There's some chipping at the bottom
Mhm.
here. There's a chip out this top corner. But other than that, look, another Another of those
Clearback, yeah.
clear backers. I think it's going to be a 5 or so. And I definitely know the 4 that I think I have is more of a 3.0, 3.5. So definite upgrade. Happy with that. Uh,
Awesome.
WonderCon, I went in not expecting to spend that much money, and boy, was I wrong. Uh, so, what's your next show? Do you know?
I do not. There are some more local shows coming up as we get into spring, but I don't have a good itinerary. I usually wait until Facebook shows me what's coming. What about
I
you?
th- I think I might be going to a show called Amazing Las Vegas Comic Con.
Okay.
It's April 28th, 29th, and 30th. I think I might actually go on the road and do that show. After that, I think the Torpedo Con is going to be here in Glendale this year, so that'll be an easy ride.
Mhm.
There's something in Cleveland happening though that I think I might come out for. What is it? Did you just say?
There is a show, Neocon is
Yeah,
coming up. Yeah.
I think I'm going to come out for that, especially if Eric from Comics or Go is going to pay my airfare and hotel. Thanks, Eric.
Neocon's a great show. It
That's a
is.
joke, by the way. He's not.
um, it's um, it's um, it's probably the largest comic book only show in the area. Great show, lots of vendors, focused primarily on comic books. Although you get your cosplayers walking around,
Yeah,
but
but
yeah, it'd be a great time to come out.
I think I might do that. So look out, people. All right, let's move on to everyone's favorite topic. It has been a couple of weeks since we've done viewer mail.
You've got mail.
Richard, I can start off this week.
Okay.
First piece of viewer mail comes to us at our Gmail, which is bronzeandmoderngods at gmail.com. Imagine that. It comes from Tom May. Hi, John and Richard. I was recently reading through issue 90 of Wizard Magazine. In it, they state that the first issue of John Byrne's reboot of Superman, Man of Steel #1 from 1986, was, at the time of that writing, in 1999, considered to be the very first variant cover. There's a cover A with the standard version and a cover B for the direct edition with alternate art and foil stamping, if I recall correctly. There's no foil. I looked at the latest edition of the Overstreet to see if there was any indication that Man of Steel #1 indeed is still considered the first true variant cover. Couldn't find anything in the Overstreet that said as much. Is Man of Steel #1 still considered the first variant cover by the current collecting community? If not, do you guys know what actually is now considered to be the very first comic to feature a true variant alternate art cover? Tom, thank you. A very good question and very good distinction. There have been variant covers well before this, price variant covers. Archie
Mhm.
had 15-cent variant covers. Marvel had 30 and 35-cent variant covers, but you're talking about a true manufactured, you have to buy 2 copies to have the complete collector's edition type of cover. And I do believe Man of Steel #1 is still the biggie. I remember the controversy around this. People were angry. Can you imagine people being angry over a variant cover, Richard, in this
No,
climate?
people seem to tolerate 90 different variant covers of recent titles. Just to have one is. I remember this book. I remember the controversy around it. At the time, it was a really, really high selling book. And I think DC was trying to capitalize on those sales by, hey, you got this cover, and look what we got over here. We got another cover for you to buy.
You had the people that went to comic shops angry because they had to go to a newsstand. You had the newsstand people who didn't have a comic shop nearby angry that they had to order it by mail in order to get it. Oh yeah. And then DC was like, hold my beer. Legends of the Dark Knight #1. You remember Legends of the Dark Knight number
Well,
one?
yeah. Uh-huh.
5 different colors, I think, and all it was a different color outer cover. Ugh,
Oh,
awful.
it's a cash grab. A lot of times these variant covers are just ways for manufacturers to produce copies of books that people will buy more than once. And, if it's good enough to buy once, why not is it good enough to buy 90 times? Um,
Take that, sucker. What's your first piece of your mail?
my first piece is from friend of the show, Jason Brownell. This is kind of self-serving. I appreciate the compliments, but I just want to preface with that. I cannot tell you how many interviews I see where the interviewers dances around topics and just can't get out what everyone wants to hear. You guys effortlessly get exactly what we want to know from these guys. This is one of those moments you two can look back and see when where this idea of yours has taken you. Enjoy that moment, that you pat yourself on the back. You guys really deserve it. Well, thank you so much, Jason. This this was probably one of the easiest interviews that I've done with John. It was really, we were talking about this off camera. You just prime the pump with Jim, and he'll just take it and run with it. And he has so many stories and so much comic history that it's not difficult for him to find a story wrapped around a particular topic that you have. And I covered the DC stuff because I'm an early DC guy from him. John covered the Marvel stuff, and he like I said, he enjoys talking about his past. He's proud of it, and we just gave him a vehicle to do that.
Thank you, Jason. And to add to that, I think the goal of that interview last week is we know our audience. Your guys are us. We've read a billion interviews with Jim Shooter. We know all about the controversies and things like that. We wanted to really focus on the work and ask questions that we've never heard people ask him before. I don't think I've ever seen an interview until ours where someone asked him what the plans were for Starbrand before he left. um, I'm particularly proud of that. So we do appreciate that you noticed. And again, we just ask the questions and sit back and let the guy talk. You can't
Yep,
lose.
yep. And I butchered Jason's last name.
I was
Sorry,
gonna I was gonna correct you, but I thought, I'll leave it.
sorry,
Let's say
Jason.
it together. Ready? One, two, three.
Brown now.
Brownell. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. My purse feast of Muir Vale comes from Patch181 on Instagram, who writes, "Hi John, I'm interested in purchasing a press machine. Uh-oh. Any recommendations? Thanks." Yes, Patch, buddy. Tussie. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. It's $200 on Amazon. You can't lose. It is fully adjustable. It's got a digital timer, digital thermometer. You can mess with the screws, everything you need to do to make it just exactly the way you want to. Buy Captain Mike's book first, read it. Don't waste your money by buying this thing and having it sit there because you don't know what to do with it. Read about it first, then buy it. You can't go wrong with a Tussie. Do you have a Tussie, Richard?
I have a Tussie.
Yeah,
I have to confess, though, my favorite press is still the Seal press.
that was what I
Um,
was going to say next. Go on.
yeah, it's a big, heavy cast iron piece of kit from the 1960s. It feels like something that, out of a nuclear bunker.
It's a
Um,
tank.
it is a tank. The thing weighs a ton, but it is consistent. It's as smooth as butter when it comes to doing presses. Presses are really, really easy with that press. Problem is, you don't want to buy. Well, I don't even know if you can still buy them brand new.
You
Um,
can't buy them. You can only get them used. They're no longer made. They no longer are supported. So if the fuse goes or something like that, you have to kind of be creative. You'll have to go on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Is Craigslist still a thing? I bought mine.
yeah, that's where I got mine off
Yeah,
Craigslist.
me
I paid
too.
220 bucks, something around there.
Yeah. How
Best
long have you had
investment.
yours?
I've had mine for 4 years now.
I bought my Seal 110S. That's the one you want, the Seal 110S. I bought it in 2006, and that thing has never failed me. But they're not out there. I mean, it's
They're
tough.
not. If and I agree with John, if you're looking for your first press or you're new to the process, the Tussie press has digital settings for the temperature and timers and all the kinds of things that you probably want. The Seal is basically just a giant heat press, and it has a temperature gauge, but it's analog. It's a thermometer that just and you have to adjust it. It's more difficult to adjust the pressure on it, but I still prefer it. But if you're entering the market in terms of starting your first press, The Tussie is a great press. It's inexpensive, and if you're going to reach out for help to the community is going to be very familiar with that press.
You just had your first big success pressing a modern book. Longtime listeners of this podcast know that Richard has been afraid to press moderns, but why don't you tell everybody what you did?
Yeah, our mutual friend Evan, he's been collecting books as long as we have. He has every single book that he has bought in 40 some odd long boxes. He was looking at some of the more valuable books, and he has an NYX number. Is it two?
The first, I think
The
it's three.
first,
Three.
I
The
think it's three.
first
Yeah,
X.
NYX 3, which
Mhm.
is the first X23, and it's going for around 1200 bucks right now as a 9.8. So he's nervous. He wanted to see the whole process of submitting to CGC. So I had him over the house, and I showed him the pressing process, and he asked if I would press the book for him, and I said sure. So I showed him what I was going to do. I used the seal press, and I have a process for the seal press. The book is in great shape. He's one of those guys who reads a book and then immediately puts it into a bag and board, and then doesn't touch it again for the next 25 years. So a lot of his collection is high grade. Pressed it. He submitted it. He didn't realize you could go onto CGC's website and watch the process as the book goes through, so that what the book's grade is before they actually ship it.
As
So
I
he
call
didn't
them,
find out until the
the
book showed up.
spoilers. The spoilers.
Right. It came and it was a 9.8. So it pressed as a 9.8, which is great. You never know with books, even the higher end quality, like my static here. You think it's something, but all it takes, the difference between a 9.6 and a 9.8 is a bad date the night before for the grader. Um, so you never really know the finality until the book actually arrives. So he got a 9.8 out of it. He was thrilled. I was thrilled because I was thrilled for him. Um, and now he wants to get into the pressing process. He's going to buy a press, and he's going to start looking at pressing his own books and submitting. And we've hooked yet another person into the process of commoditizing these comic books.
You weren't pressing when we reconnected about comics. Our friend Forrest wasn't pressing until we talked him into it. Guys, the fate of your collection should be in your hands.
Right.
Period. So you got to make a little investment in equipment. You got to make a little investment in education and your time. But boy, does it pay off in dividends. I mean,
It does. The one time I used an external presser was with my Ultimate Fallout 4 newsstand, and I was disappointed with the results. I didn't press it myself because it was a modern book, and I was nervous about pressing modern books. In hindsight, I wish I had taken the time to learn, because I think I could have got better than the grade that I got. And like you say, it would be in my hand. My fate is in my hands, good or ill. But definitely, I think
you-
it's better off when you control the whole process.
you're not going to crack it out and try?
I think I get it. I think I could get a 9.2.
Okay.
The problem with cracking it is you are now introducing all this risk in the process, where
It's never stopped me.
yeah, I know it's never stopped you. This book is, the book is part of my permanent collection. It's not going
Yeah.
anywhere.
Yeah. Oh,
So the 9.0 is fine. And the risk of cracking it and potentially have it drop in grade, or worse, have CGC pop a staple or something horrifying like that, is just not worth it to me for a bump in grade for something that'll never sell.
this will be on YouTube forever, I believe. People of the future, Richard's heirs, crack that book open, press it, and resubmit it.
Yeah, good luck. Just make sure I'm not around, because
You
I don't
won't
want to.
be
I don't
around.
want
This is
to
I'm
cause it.
talking to the people in 2135.
No
Guys,
descendants.
do we have flying cars yet? Richard, what's your next piece of your mail?
Okay, my next piece is from Jet City Comics. And this is kind of hits on something we talked about a little bit earlier. He says, "I'd rather buy a raw book over a graded book, but I'm old school." So yeah, and I think a lot of people are feeling that.
You
Raw books are more. Well, there are a number of advantages to raw books. less expensive. You can actually read the damn thing. Once you grade a book, it's sealed in amber, and you never can actually open it up. Um, and it's comic books are meant to be read, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose. This is like race. Classic cars are meant to be driven, and these things are tools, and they should be used. So keeping it raw means you are able to do that. And I think the combination of those visceral feelings about interacting with the book and the lower price point of entry is significant. This book, this static book, I paid $220 for. If I get it graded, it may be a $1,200 book. What would you rather pay? And once that I have that $1,200 graded book, I can't read it. So I think a lot of people are looking, are more price sensitive today than they may have been back at the height of the boom. So I think that has some effect on it. Um, but yeah, I understand the appreciating raw books over graded books. I still say grade books in certain situations. If a book is going to be a part of your permanent collection and you want to protect it, the slab offers a number of levels of protection to that book. If you're buying older books and you're concerned about things like restoration or people trimming edges of books or modifying books in a certain way, having CGC or CBCS grade the book gives you a sense of the condition of that book. Now they're also not necessarily flawless companies, and they're run by humans, but it at least gives you a third set of eyes to look at that book and determine if it's been uh, restored or altered in some way. So there are advantages to being graded too. And this hobby is you focus on what you want. I have books that are graded um, that I want to have protected, like my Fantastic Four #5. And I have raw books. I have tons of raw books. I have a whole bunch of Miles books that are raw and they'll never be graded, but they're a part of my collection because I enjoy every now and then reading them. And you can't do that with graded books.
It's so interesting that Jet City wrote this because we were just at two different cons across the country from each other, and noticing the increase in raw books being sold by dealers versus slabs. The dealer I bought the Dark Shadows one and the Yellow Claw, it was almost all raw, everything, and he had stuff from the 50s. He had really scarce Peanuts books, which I was gonna uh, get a few of them. The disadvantage though that this dealer in particular, he was asking graded prices for his raw books.
Uh, okay.
Where if you're not going to get it graded, don't put that price on
Right.
it. So I can see there is a trend of raws reemerging. So who knows? I mean, I think a lot of people, we were sick of CGC's grading for a while. It's gotten a little
Yeah.
better, I have to say. It's gotten a little better.
Yeah. No, as I said, you do you collect books how you like. If you want raw books, collect raw books. If you like graded books, do that. Or if you like John and myself, have a mixture.
There's a
It
mix.
depends on the book and the opportunity, and
Jet City, it's your
that's it.
collection. You do you, man. No one can tell
That's
you what
right.
to do. You know you better than anybody else. My next piece of viewer mail is from our buddy Loco for Comics, big Fantastic Four fan. Talking about the Shooter interview again. This is a great interview that reminds me of conversations with Mr. Shooter at recent cons. He is one of the last creators alive connected to the Silver Age through the Copper Age. Thank you. That is why I'm talking about this piece of viewer mail from you, Loco, because these guys aren't going to be around forever. I don't mean to be maudlin, but Paul Levitz, Roy Thomas, Jerry Conway, Jim Shooter, they're our last link to, in this case with Jim, Silver Age, because he was so young when he came in. These other guys are Bronze Age. Roy Thomas is Silver. If we don't get some of this stuff on the record, we're gonna miss them. I mean, my lord, could you imagine if we had Jack Kirby on this podcast? The questions we could
Uh,
ask.
your head would explode to begin with. We'd have to
Uh,
get you hospitalized.
I would make it happen. I can put on the professional John thing. When I meet people like this, you know what I always do? I always,
Mm.
I act cool, but then I always tell them this. By the way, I need 30 seconds to fanboy out, okay? And they go, "Oh, okay." And then I get it all out of me in 30 seconds, and then I'm like, "Okay, now." back to being professional. So when you meet famous people or artists or things like that, they kind of like to hear that you're a fan. It's not bad.
Mhm.
It's not a bad thing. What's your
Yeah,
next piece of
yeah.
news?
Oh, before we go on, I just want to say, Jim Shooter is, you know, one of the last contacts around that has intimate knowledge of Stan Lee, and
Hmm.
Jack Kirby,
Yep.
and has more than just a passing relationship with them. He worked with them for years and has insight into their personality and into their work ethic. And like you say, one day he's not going to be available. So I love the fact that we had an opportunity to interview him and to get things on record, and just to learn from him. Me personally, his conversation about the early Legion stuff was just awesome. This I will cherish that.
Indeed. What is your next piece of URL?
My next piece is from Yan McCrae. He says, OMG, as a person with a BA in history, but not a historian, it is so refreshing to see a rational discussion of racism in history. It was, it still is, and it will be a thing. But these books are 50 to 80 years ago, and they reflect the world at that time. Travel the world, study other countries and cultures, and it will become obvious that human nature, tribalism, is the normal, the primordial condition we must always fight against. Progress has been made, but plenty of room for advancement is available. Cheers and keep up the shows. So unique and mature when it comes to comic book content on YouTube. By miles and miles, you separate yourselves.
By Miles
How
Morales.
many miles?
So much more. Oh, wow, wow. So much more mature. Sorry, Yan. We'll go back to the
Yeah,
show.
this is an important point. We don't focus on racism and race on this show, um, but it is a part of culture. It's a part of comics, and I try not to shy away from it when it's in front of us. And it's important to realize that these books are pieces of history. They are snapshots of culture at a particular time. And if you look at the war books from the Korean War era. The way they portray Koreans is just subhuman. The same thing with some of the German soldiers in the Second World War. There's caricatures of people of culture, and I think it's important to call that out and recognize that these things exist and are part of that time. And these times bleed over from those times to today, of course. But we need to realize, and we need not to penalize people because of things that are portrayed in comics from 50 years ago. Um, I'm totally about awareness and recognizing that there are inherent racism in some of these older books, and as opposed to just ignoring it and sweeping it under the rug, let's acknowledge it, and let's move forward from there and use it as a basis. Anybody who ignores history is bound to repeat it. So I appreciate your call out, Yan. Uh, it's definitely something that I keep in mind as we do these shows. As an African American, it's something that's always on the surface, and is a part of my calculations in life. But it's not something that I think needs to be. Um, it needs to be, uh, you know, penalized for these older books because they represent people a certain way. I cherish some of these really racist books, like All Negro Comics, which is an awesome, the first book published by an African American publisher. Only had two issues because they wouldn't actually only had one issue because they wouldn't publish the second issue.
No distribution.
Um, right. Things like that. I would love to have a copy of that. I think it's an important book. The characters in that book are, and looking at today's standards, yeah, it's pretty racist. But again, it's how the world was back in those days, and I think we need to recognize that and embrace it.
I think we've actually gotten a lot further than we as Americans give ourselves credit for. And by that I mean Richard and I have the ability to look at a character like Ebony from The Spirit or Whitewash Jones from The Young Allies and laugh because it's so blinking ridiculous that wow, look at how blatantly racist and goofy the depictions were back then. And that does say something about, that would never fly today, which is, I guess, question mark progress question mark. But it also, to use myself as an example, I don't buy the yellow claw because it's a racist prediction of the yellow peril, from the 50s. I buy it because of Jimmy Woo. There was an Asian hero that fought against the yellow claw. That, the protagonist was Asian as well. So, and I have a real affinity for Agents of Atlas, which was, Jimmy
Mhm.
Woo, his new kind of group that has been in Marvel for about 20 years now, believe it or not. Wow.
Oh my God, really?
Um, so that's why I buy these books. And it's also kind of like African Americans collect some ephemera from those times, like,
Mhm.
salt shakers with really bad, jockey like depictions and things like that, because they don't want to forget these things occurred and existed. So, yeah, good, very heavy conversation for a comic podcast.
Yeah, but it's I think we as a nation do ourselves a disservice because we ignore history. It's something that's happened in the past 10 years or so. I feel we sweep it all under the rug and we want to redefine things and pretend like it didn't happen. It happened,
Yeah.
and it should be a part of our decisions moving forward. Everything that happened in the past, because it's important that we recognize those things.
You shouldn't pass legislation to stop people from learning about it. Okay, moving on. Julius Maloney writes, so I have to thank you for this interview with Jim Shooter and for showing Dazzler some love. Alongside Wonder Woman, Dazzler was the first series I collected, and the first wave of the pandemic set me off wanting to fill any gaps of the run. She has been one of my favorite Marvel characters alongside a slew of the late 70s lady heroes like She Hulk, Ms. Marvel, and Spider Woman. To get a glimpse behind the curtain of the production and further intel on the Lost movie, which was also covered in the letter columns of her original run, this was bliss. Thank you, Richard, for highlighting issue 1. Some of the Dazzler covers are just breathtaking, and that number 1 really stands out. Also, as an aside, I believe Alison Blair's debut in Uncanny X-Men 130 is probably more highly valued, with the CGC 9.8 being currently valued at about $1,245 to $2,195, as it's also part of the Dark Phoenix story
Mhm.
arc. Julius, I was joking in the live chat on Monday during the premiere when Jim Shooter was talking about the Dazzler movie. There was Upper Manhattan and Lower Manhattan, and Upper Manhattan was ruled by Donna Summer, and Lower Manhattan was ruled by Cher, and the Dazzler was going to bring them both together. Every gay man's head exploded, uh, including mine.
Oh,
Yeah, I there was glitter flying out of my ears. It was amazing. Can you imagine village people in this movie? A
oh my
kiss,
goodness. That
legislation.
movie would be talk about a movie that would that would live forever.
Where's my TARDIS? I'm going back and I'm doing this. So yeah, Julius, you are not alone. Dazzler gets lots of love around here. Those Bill Sienkiewicz covers.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness. You get the highs and the lows with Dazzler. You get the highs of the Bill Sienkiewicz covers. Then you open it up and you get Frank Springer art. That's not fair.
Well, you get the highs and low with Bill Sienkiewicz in general, though.
Oh, you're not a Bill fan. I know.
I I'm I am a partial Bill fan,
You
so
don't like his more abstract
I
approach, right?
don't. I don't.
See, I
I
like that.
apologize.
There's a cover, and it's this nice, impressionistic painting of a tidal wave coming, and she's on roller skates, like skating towards the reader in like hot pants. It's amazing. It's like the campiest cover ever. I love it. All right, what is your final piece of viewer mail? Richard, take us out.
My final piece is from Brooks Robinson. This is in regards to something I talked about in the last convention that I went to. Um,
Oh, the
this
the guy selling the keys.
Yes, the guy had a backpack and he pulls out all these keys, and there was a lot of busyness with dealers looking at them. In regards to those Hulk 1, Spider-Man 1, etc., I would imagine if they had been stolen, he would have accepted the lower offer in cash to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Then again, thieves aren't often smart. Um, Talked to some more to Eric, who was a dealer that Keith, the gentleman from Nerdbox, approached to get a second opinion on, and looked at these books. The gentleman who was selling them, he was an older gentleman. Um, he had he knew the books were valuable, but you could tell he didn't know anything about comics. He had the Hulk #1 in just a Mylar with no backing boards, nothing. It was just flopping around. And so he pulled these things out and was showing them off to Keith. And so Keith was concerned about potential um, trims around the book. Looking at the guy, you buy the seller in a lot of cases. I just didn't think that that was a huge possibility that these books were trimmed. I would be more concerned about color touch because that seems to be more,
Did
people
you see
see
them
books. I
physically?
did see them. He pulled them out. Forrest and I were at the Nerdbox booth, and we were going through because Nerdbox has great books. So we're going through his boxes, and the guy shows up, and Keith put him aside, and he opens his backpack, and he pulls out this Hulk. No, first book he pulled out was a Spider-Man #1, and my radar went yeah, yeah. I immediately turned and looked. I didn't get involved in it, but he was literally like 6 feet away from me. And then he pulls out the Hulk #1, and then he pulls out a couple Avengers #1, and Keith got really serious. He's sitting there, he's looking at the books, and he's trying to, he's got his iPhone out, and he's using the flashlight and looking at the books. And um, there was a whole lot of conversation about those books, and the long and the short of it was, from what I was told, eventually the decision was made that um, they would help him submit the book to be graded, and then they would buy the book based on the grade.
Okay.
That kind of alleviates the concerns about color touch and trimming and all the other restoration methods if they were there. And it gives, that's the one great thing about grading. It gives you a normalized a value for that book. A 9.0 is going to be worth this amount. Um, so that was what I heard is the final outcome of that whole process. So we'll see. I mean,
Well,
we'll
I
see.
asked you I asked you if you saw them because you said you don't suspect trimming, and you saw the books. Did the edges look really straight? Because those books, particularly Hulk #1, are notorious for Marvel chipping because the razor blade, when they were cutting those books, was dull.
Mm. No, that's the first thing I look. When we talk about trimming, and trimming is the process of cutting the edge of the book to make it straight, because people assume a book with a clean, straight edge is more valuable than one with a ragged edge. It's not necessarily true. A ragged edge, original ragged edge, is more valuable than a trimmed straight edge.
Transformers #1, 9.8 gets a 9.8, even though the top back edge is all ragged from a dull razor, basically.
That's a good point. Some of these are recognized as manufacturer errors,
Mm.
that's taken into account in grading. Manufacturer errors are always taken into account. Miracle Man #1, the first 1,000 issues, had a crease in the cover
Mhm.
um, that is a part of the manufacturing process. You can still get a 9.8 even though that crease exists in the cover. So I looked at these books, and especially the Hulk. The Hulk had marble. What I saw, Marvel chipping around the edge. It was
Okay.
not. It was not a straight edge. Um, none of these books were above a 3.5.
Mhm.
I mean, they weren't mint books. These are books that had been loved and had been sitting in somebody's closet for a while. Um, so looking at them, this is my first impression, and looking at it from 6 feet away. So obviously, I put those caveats on. But I would have been confident in buying the books if I had the money and they were offered to me. Now, I would probably factor my price to consider some of the risk, because it's always a risk that
Yeah.
there's some kind of issues with raw books. Um, but then apparently, this guy, the person who had the books, wasn't really dealing that much. He had a price in mind. Where he got that price, we really don't know. Um, and was reluctant to take less than that. And that to me is also a sign of somebody who's, these, you talk about being stolen. If somebody's sticking to their guns on a price, um, more than likely they're not stolen. This is just, he's been told it's worth so much, and therefore that's what he wants. The getting it graded is a great way of sidestepping that, because you can now point to an industry standard price for a particular grade and say, it's not a $10,000 book here. We look at it, it's grades at a 1.5. It's a $5,000 book.
Mhm.
When we'll pay appropriately. Uh, so there's advantages in that. But from what I saw of the books, they look legit, and I was really interested. I've never seen a Hulk one raw before.
Really?
No, I've got friends. My friend Tom, he's got a Hulk one. It's graded. When you get to certain books,
You gotta get it
um,
graded.
you got to get it graded,
Yeah.
right? So to find one raw, especially that book is notorious for just being brittle.
And
Um,
color touch to hell. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So to see one raw was kind of a unique experience. So it was really interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't a popular book. It got canceled after 6 issues. Not a
Yeah.
big print run. Not a lot of faith in it, which is why it's so friggin' expensive and dark cover. And why you should have followed him to the parking lot and be like, "I'll buy you McDonald's."
I still fantasize about having another garbage bag collection show up, and
You never know.
you know,
That only happened what, 4 years ago.
yeah, you
So
never know.
it's
You
like
never know.
my second Doctor Who reference of the show. Sometimes a lost episode appears out of nowhere in Nigeria from a shed. People get excited. You never know.
Yeah, you
This
never know.
that action one that was found in the wall along with insulation a few years ago. Yeah, never, it needs a press. Never
You
know.
would think.
One thing I do know is that certain segments of this show rule. One of them is the 25-year rule. That transition was stolen from a viewer who submitted it, whose name I'm blanking on now. Whoever that was, thank
Put in
you.
the show notes.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
that. 25-year rule. You picked it. You take it.
Yeah, I picked Batman Adventures, The Lost Years from 1998, specifically issue number one. This is a pretty interesting book. It's done in the animation style of the TV show, which was popular at the time. And in this book, Robin starts to question Batman's methods. You could see, Robin is not just someone who just goes along with what Batman says here. He's starting to question. And when Batman starts interrogating a goon in front of the goon's family, his wife and kid, he's beating up this guy in front of his family, and Robin is like, "Whoa!" I think that was the moment that Robin decided that this was not, he couldn't do this anymore, I didn't see any specific references to Nightwing, but I'm fairly certain this was the lead into to Nightwing
Mm.
in his introduction. So Batman is, he's starting to contemplate a new sidekick, and through this issue, Batman figures out who Batgirl is, because Batgirl's fighting on their side. So he approaches Barbara Gordon and shows Barbara Gordon the Batcave, and introduces her to that side of his life.
She doesn't
And
figure out that it's underneath Wayne Manor and
uh, you know,
okay, all right.
why it took Batman, here's Batgirl with this auburn hair that's, of a certain length, and then here's Barbara Gordon, who also has auburn hair of a
Didn't
certain
she wear
length.
a wig though?
Does she? I
I think she
don't.
used to wear a wig. I think. I don't know. Go on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But anyway, this is a man who can determine, a murderer by a fingerprint, and he can't figure out this woman who hangs around with him, who she is, who when she hangs around with him in her alter, her.
She's the crafty detective, not him. She.
So this is part, Batman Adventures is a part of that animated universe, and it differs a bit from the DC main canon. But it's to me, DC. This is DC's strength, not the movies. The DCEU. and the movies are being it's all been rebooted now because it just has not performed to the place that DC wanted it to, and that's why they brought in Mr. Gunn to redo everything. But I think this is their strength. Consistently, the animation studio has put out excellent TV shows, be it Batman, Superman, Batman Beyond. Um, they did a Legion run. They've done Justice League run. You know, Green Lantern. All these shows have been great. They've done animated movies. They did The Killing Joke as a movie. Um, and I think that's their real strength. If you ask me, I would invest more in that animated universe. This particular book, you can find this on eBay for 10 to 30 bucks. It's not an overly valuable book, but I think it's an important moment in history where Robin looks Batman in the eye and says, you're not really going to beat up this man in front of his family. And Batman says, he's got information I need, and the faster I get it, the better. And it's that moment that Robin recognizes that Batman really is a psychopath, and I'm sorry, that's just what he is. And
He's become who he despises
yeah,
because
that's
his parents were murdered in front of him as a child.
it's one of the things that makes Batman such an interesting character is that he's on this knife edge of justice and
Do you like that
vigilantism.
Batman though? That's not Batman. That's Frank Miller's Batman. That's what has become Batman, but that's not Batman.
It's not the original Batman. I can definitely agree with you there. I think that there is a gritty Batman, which is what is portrayed mostly now. This animated series is not as dark as the Dark Knight, but it's still it's a darker Batman. But you go back to the original Batman, he was nothing like.
Well,
Uh,
you could argue the pre-Robin Bob Kane stuff. He carried a gun in one story. He was a little ruthless, but he wasn't a friggin' psychopath.
yeah,
He's a vigilante that had a mission and didn't care. Well, maybe that's just a psychopath. I don't know.
I think it varies for the writer. The writer takes him down. He is a character that has a complex psyche,
Mhm.
and a writer can adjust it to however level of dark he wants it to be, and still be within the accepted range, norm for Batman. So sometimes you get Batman, you get the Dark Knight Batman, and other times you get a more detective Batman out of it. But I think what has proven to be the most popular is Batman at his most violent.
Yeah,
And I think that's why we'll continue to see that shift towards the darker side of the Dark Knight.
you can't fight sales. Are we ready for a murderous Tweedledee and Tweedledum? I don't know. There are so many villains in the Rogues Gallery that they just don't jibe with dark, gritty Batman. I mean, they've tried to make the Riddler into something, but he's still the goofy guy, Edward Nigma, that leaves riddles and clues.
Yeah. The Batman show, the Batman is really a half of a whole. Batman is one half and the Joker is the other.
Yeah.
And
That's all it's become, though. It's become that 9 out of 10 times,
yeah,
or ancillary spin-offs like Punchline and Harley and
it really has become a story of those two. It's a relationship between Batman and the Joker, and how far can the Joker push Batman, and how far is Batman willing to go to push back. And this tension between the two of them has driven the Detective Comics and Batman, and we've got multiple series about the Joker. The Joker seems to be the primary character. He's not even the primary villain. He's a primary character of the Batman mythos right now. And you're right. All these other characters that are made in his early times, like the Riddler or the Penguin, um, even Doctor Freeze. They're they don't fit into that darker narrative that is that dualism with the Joker and Batman. So I don't know where they take him. I
well,
I see.
have you read the Chip Zdarsky run? It's
No, I
coming.
haven't.
Well, neither have I. Everyone's raving about it, so we hear you screaming at your iPhone or your TV set right now. We hear you.
I
We're
got to
just
read it.
yeah, we got to get on that. I'll do that right after I read the X-Men Krakatoa run.
That's good. You should read
Still,
that.
still way overdue on reading that. Let's move on to our underrated books of the week. I can start us off with my underrated book. I have it right here. It's in a CBCS slab, Richard.
Oh,
I bought it that way. I would not knowingly purchase something like this unless it was already slabbed. It is Megaton #1. We had Megaton #3 earlier,
mhm.
the first Savage Dragon cover. This is Megaton #1. This contains the first published artwork from Mr. Larsen. This is Erik Larsen's first published artwork.
Wow.
It also includes artwork from Butch Geis, who did the cover, and Gene Day. Some good stuff in here. This came out during the black and white boom of 1983 with the Turtles, and you had all these indie black and whites.
Hmm.
A 9.8 of that book sold in February for $505,
There you
while a
go.
9.6, just two little decimal places, not decimal places, but two decimal points. I don't know, how would you say that? Fraction sold. Okay, the 9.8, 505, the 9.6, $125.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I understand it's a tougher book, especially in grade. This was an indie black and white title from 1983 in that first wave that was bargain bin fodder for years. Nobody was looking for Megaton to save, and except for maybe their families of the artists involved. But this is a 9.2. I bought it as a 9.2 because I was looking through the slab and I see two, three, maybe four pressable defects. So I am going to crack this sucker out. I have no fear. I'm
All
going to
right.
press it, resubmit it, and hopefully get a 9.8 in my Megaton collection. I'll just need a #2 at this point. And the Megaton run that nobody wants besides me will be complete.
Well, you have to update us on the story of that book
I
once you crack
will.
it and
I got to
submit it.
figure out. I don't think I've ever cracked a CBCS slab before.
And well, you'd be a learning experience.
I think if I just whack it against this table as hard as I can, right?
Oh, you can say that.
The top third, it will. Oh, yeah. Well, what's your underrated book?
My underrated book this week is Ultimate Fallout, but #3.
It's plot twist.
Yeah. Okay. This, Spider-Man is dead, and who will take up his mantle is the storyline here. Ultimate, we know in Ultimate Fallout 4, it is Miles Morales. You get a little teaser image on the last page of this book. You get a picture of a fraction of the cover for Ultimate Fallout 4. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a tease for Miles. You could technically say, he's appearing there, even though all you see is his hand in the mask. This obviously Ultimate Fallout #4 is the value book in this, but it's a 6 issue run. There is direct issue versions of those 6 books. There are newsstand versions of those 6 books, and finally there are 1 in 25 versions of the books. There's some second prints and convention specials in there too, if you're being completionist. But I think the books that are, other than 4, are becoming harder and harder to come by. I remember when I was, because I am a completionist, I have issues, and I wanted every single variation of every book in this run. It's only 6 issues, right? It's not that difficult, but I had a hard time. For over a year, I was scanning eBay looking for issue #2 in a newsstand, for example, or issue #6 of the full run of the 1 in 25. Had a hard time finding. I lucked on a full run of the directs. That's how I got mine 9.8 of the first print. I also had a an issue #4, the 1 in 25 that I got pressed and submitted it. Didn't even press it. I just submitted it. Got a 9.8 out of it. I sold it back when it was only worth 2 grand, and I regret that. but we all have regrets about things. But I think this series is becoming harder and harder to complete for people who want the whole run. It's getting more and more difficult. I find that you see listings on eBay less and less for issues other than number 4. Number 3 again has that little bit of teaser and a little bit of value for Miles fans. But I think all these books, buy them while they're still affordable. You can find copies, sometimes for $30. Um, you get the 1 in 25s, they'll be a little bit more pricey. I think a 1 in 25, the 9.8 is about $600 graded. But I think this run is undervalued right now, and I think now is a good time to finish your run if you want to get a full run. I think it's ultimately doable and still affordable.
Ultimately.
But no, I think this is something that isn't too difficult to do, and like I say, do it now before it becomes more difficult to do.
You have newsstands of all 6.
I have newsstands of all 6. Yes.
Which was the toughest to find? Not
The
the
tough.
most expensive, the toughest.
I went for a long time. I got the first newsstand I got was 4.
Of course.
I found a 1 and I found a 6. I could not find 2 and 3. 2 and 3 eluded me for forever. And finally, one guy had listed on eBay a 2 and a 3, and they were like $110, I think, a piece.
Mhm.
120. I talked them down to both books for 200, and so I got those books. They're all of my books are in higher grade. I'm not going to say they're all 9.8s or whatever, but I was just glad to get the newsstands. I mean, the newsstands just really are tough to get because apparently they're just not out there a lot. And if it's not for, people may not have a whole lot of interest in preserving them. So, to getting them at all was a real challenge.
Traditionally, these books go on a downward slope in print runs. Issue 1 is the highest print run, then there's a big drop for 2, a drop for 3, 4, 5, 6. I wonder what the print run for a newsstand number 6 must be, because
Yeah, that's a good question.
this was the end of the Ultimate Universe. It was not selling like it used to. Newsstand outlets probably reduced to Barnes and Nobles and things like of that nature at this point. So I have to wonder, even though 2 and 3 were the hardest for you to find, I have to wonder if number 6 newsstand is the scarcest.
It makes sense. It makes total sense. I unfortunately we don't have any numbers for these. So
scarcer than Gem, Son of Saturn, number 12 newsstand. You decide.
Potentially.
You decide, folks. And on that Gem, Son of Saturn reference, we're going to wrap it up for this week. Richard, remind everyone where they can find us, please.
On Facebook and Instagram, they can find us at Bronze and Modern Gods, and on the website, bronzeandmoderngods.com.
And if you like this, hit like, hit subscribe, hit notifications. You know the deal. And we'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.
Everybody, stay safe.